Hello everyone, I'm Leah from TYFU. If you've ever struggled with job interviews, felt nervous, unsure what to say, or just wanted to stand out from the competition, this is the conversation for you. I'm so thrilled to be joined by two incredible women, Sarah and Emma Smith, the powerhouse sisters behind Interview Boss. Sarah is a seasoned recruiter with first-hand experience in what hiring managers look for, and Emma, with a background in radio, delivers communication and storytelling magic. Together, they've helped thousands of job seekers through their award-winning Interview Boss podcast and Interview Boss Academy. Today, we'll cover everything from how they started, their top interview tips, and how they can help you land your next job. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Leah. We're excited to
And
be
what
here.
an amazing intro.
Yeah, I know.
You
Such
guys
an
are
incredible
awesome.
intro.
I might
we're
steal
excited
that
to
from
help
my
the
LinkedIn
community.
bio.
Yeah, there you go. Sarah, maybe we can start with you because you've been in recruitment for years. Can you tell us what first got you interested in that industry?
So I did a psychology degree. I was always really interested in science and was really then drawn to kind of working out people and understanding the brain and how that all works. And I knew I didn't want to practice and become a psychologist in a clinical field, and kind of just fell into organizational psychology. I thought that was really interesting. Landed my first ever job post uni with a recruitment agency. So in agency recruitment, working for Hayes. Not really a recruitment job so much. It's actually a lot of a sales job with a tiny little bit of recruitment thrown in. But that was kind of my intro to that whole world. And it's led to the last kind of 10 years of me being in HR and recruitment, and to eventually kind of starting Interview Boss as well.
Amazing.
They had some really incredible training, no hate on them. That job didn't work out for me, but great organization to kind of be a part of and a good start in that space. And it helps me understand as well how agencies function too.
Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent foundations there. And can we hear a little bit about your background, Emma, and how you got into radio? How exciting.
Yeah, so I studied journalism at university and always sort of knew I wanted to do that throughout school. Loved English, writing, public speaking, just that was very much my thing. So had a gap year, went to uni and did that. And I was working in hospo at the time in my first year of uni. And then it was actually my sister's, not this sister, our other middle sister Annie, was living with a housemate who had a job with the radio station that I work for on the street team. So it's the promotions team, the kind of front facing team of the station that drives around the branded cars, hands out freebies, all about that feel good energy. So she worked on that team and told my sister that they were hiring. And I didn't know much about radio at all, but I was like, oh, that'd be awesome, like to get a foot in the door in the industry. So I went for the job. I actually just missed out on it. They said they went with another person who just had a tiny bit more experience.
She was
but
the
that they
runner-up.
loved me and could they keep me on file? And sure enough, a week later, I got the call up because someone had resigned. So yeah, that was in my
Only 1 week later, because when you hear that as a job seeker, you think that they're just saying that. You never
Yes.
hear
Yeah.
somebody actually being called up afterwards.
Yes.
So,
Yep. And only a week. Like
yeah,
it was
that's
amazing. So I did that for a year or so, and then I just loved it. I always thought that maybe I'd get into like print or long form journalism, but once I was in radio, I just loved it. The immediate nature of it, the fun. Yeah, I loved it. So I then did a bit of work experience with the journalist in the newsroom at my job. And then after a few months of, going in and being a pest and trying to learn everything, a job opening popped up as well. So now I've been there for 3 years in radio news doing the breakfast shift. So yeah, kind of just fell into it, but haven't
prime
looked
time
back.
as well, the breakfast shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent timing, it sounds like. Just meant
Yes.
to be sometimes.
Yes.
So,
And Em was dead set. She had every single one of the people in her life convincing her out of journalism. What about communications?
Yes.
What about this? Journalism's going to be really tough. It's harder to get
Yes.
jobs. It's an industry that's not necessarily on the up and up, like in terms of a lot of growth. It's not going anywhere, but we were kind of trying to convince her. She was dead set. No, it's journalism, 100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I want to do. And no, It was
And you
good she
proved
stuck with it.
everybody wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is
And
easy to be swayed by well-meaning relatives or loved ones.
yes.
Yeah.
They have your best intentions at heart. And yeah, journalism can be very tough to crack. But
Yeah, but on the other hand,
degree, yeah,
it's ever evolving, it's thriving, it's online, it's digital, it's
Mm.
changing, but it's not dead at all. And yeah, my biggest ick used to be when, you know, an old uncle or something, oh, but print media's done. You're like, okay, look, happy to take that from maybe someone in the industry who's like
right.
lived experience, but I'm like, to the people that have no idea, you just got to ignore those opinions.
Yeah,
Well, and
absolutely.
I always think you don't need, when you're searching for jobs too, you don't need the whole workforce to all get employed. You don't need every journalism student to get a job. You
Yeah.
just need
Yeah,
one for you, you know, like
yeah,
that's very possible.
yeah. And I think with radio, I guess you have to be quite good at being impromptu as opposed to like a long form writer or something. Yeah.
Yes.
So you must be pretty quick and good on your feet to be
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
radio.
constantly sprinting between my
Yeah.
desk and the news booth, you know, last minute writing seconds before the news when the ads are playing. Yeah, stuff coming through, and you want to get it in that next bulletin. Otherwise, you've got to wait a whole, you know, 40 minutes.
Mm.
So, yeah, definitely fast paced, but
Yeah.
I love
And then
that.
she does the kind of segments with the on-air presenters as well, and being really quick-witted and quick on her feet and making jokes, and that's kind of the magic that has made Interview Boss what it is. I think being the youngest of three sisters
Mhm.
meant that she was kind of like had to fight for the attention a little bit, and it made her
She had
definitely
to
the
find her
funniest and
voice.
wittiest of the three of us.
Yes.
Fighting for
Probably
my life out here.
the yeah. So I love a good origin story. So
Mm.
you both launched Interview Boss, the podcast, and it's now honestly a go-to resource for job seekers, and not just in Australia. What inspired you to start the podcast? Whose idea was it, and why is a third sister not involved?
So that's a great question. I while Emma was at uni and kind of through all those years, I've been a massive fan of podcasts as a listener. Like I listened to anything and everything I could get my hands on. Even when podcasting in Australia was kind of early days, like most of what you were listening to was coming out of the US or the UK. And I really loved the idea of kind of starting a podcast. I didn't know exactly what that would kind of be. So that idea kind of lingered in the back of my head for a few years. But then I was kind of starting to notice that I would get questions from my roommates at the time, or friends, or colleagues, or my sister's friends, or my sisters, asking about applying for jobs or interviews and things like that. And I'd give them an answer or some advice, thinking that that was really obvious. Oh, but everybody knows that. And they go, no, Sarah, nobody knows that. Like we don't know what goes on the other side. And just through all these things that I'd had exposure to, sitting in on interviews or reading applications, or people don't know what anyone else's CV looks like, really, unless a friend has maybe shared theirs. And it's easy to kind of forget that when you're exposed to all of that. So I thought, wow, there's really not a lot of good information out there. And the tips that I would kind of find, or blogs or things that I would read, were giving really generic, really bad advice. And there's a lot of wonderful YouTube channels out there. There's a lot of other really great resources. But being a podcast lover, I thought, okay, well, is there a resource in podcasting? And there really wasn't. So, again, sat with that idea for a little while. I knew I wanted a co-host. I didn't know kind of what that should look like. But I think it was after a weekend Em and I had spent together and just catching up and chatting and our back and forth and our banter and laughing. And I thought, oh, okay, she wants to do radio, journalism. This is going to be great. We'll just, it'll be something for her portfolio. And Em was like, yep, sure, let's do it. And we kind of
Amazing.
worked from there. It was actually really, really helpful to have her journalistic insights. And there was a lot of things in the early days that I wouldn't have known had it not been for her on-air experience as well, which has really been useful.
Yeah, you've got such
And
complementary skills and different skills. Sorry, Emma. Yeah.
no, you're fine. I was going to say, and in terms of our other sister, Annie, she's
Yes.
a sonographer and radiographer. So she's out there
Okay.
scanning things in the medical field.
Saving
Yeah.
And
lives and
she's
protecting
also
lives.
a beautiful introvert. I don't think she would want to be involved, even if we we wanted
Fair
her
enough.
to.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
She's our biggest supporter though, and she came to our awards ceremony.
Yes, our biggest
been
hype
very
girl.
Yeah, very much involved
That is
in
so cool.
other
And
ways behind the
congratulations
scenes.
on your recent Australian Podcast Award win, by the way. How
Thank
fantastic. That
you.
must have been so exciting.
Thanks. It was
It
really
was
cool to be
amazing.
nominated.
Yeah.
Nominated even just as an independent podcast. It's just the two of
Yes.
us.
So you're up
We
against
have
some pretty big names and
yeah, and
Yeah.
like big budgets, big networks,
yeah.
massive. It was really, really cool to kind of be recognized. I think in podcasting, there's a space for everyone. And whilst we're not the world's biggest show, the difference that we make for our listeners in that particular time of their life when they're looking for a job, we wanted to kind of specialize in that niche and not be all things to all people. It's if you're job hunting right now, then you should listen.
You
If you're
are.
not, then you probably won't get that much out of it.
No, it's super helpful. And just speaking of your podcast, so it does cover, everything from tricky interview questions to job set, like mindset shifts. What are some of the most popular topics that you guys have found have resonated the most with job seekers?
You can go, Sarah.
You've
We've
covered so many. Yeah.
Yeah, I might talk about some of the kind of technical topics, and then I'll get Em to touch on the ones that maybe have surprised us that have been the most
Yeah, that'd
popular.
be
So
awesome.
the things that people are looking for all the time are, what do I have to do? I've got an interview coming up. It's in 2 days' time. Like, they've found us with a couple of days to spare. So a lot of the, how do I prep for the tell us about yourself question, or here's the top 3 things you need to do before your interview, those kinds of like, I have an interview right now type episodes tend to be really, really popular. And then the thing that's probably surprised us has been all of the mindset episodes that we've done along the way. We always knew that that would be important because I see it. I've seen it so many times where the person in front of me being interviewed, their mindset's getting in the way of them being able to answer the questions the right way because they're interpreting things funny, or they've taken the wrong advice from wrong people. They're trying to flip everything, and it's really getting in the way of just a productive conversation. So I knew mindset would be important, but I didn't think that would be the thing that we got so many compliments on. So Em, what have been some of those episodes that we've done?
Any other surprising topics that have been really popular?
Yeah, well, our number one listened to episode is actually a hype up episode where we want you to play it when you're in the car. It's short and sweet, 12 minutes. You've got that, maybe you're driving there or you're like in the car geeing yourself up to go in. And it's literally just us as if we're your best friends, gassing you up, being like, you've got this, don't worry about
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
that is often how people find us, which we laugh about because we're like, there's no actual advice in there. It's just,
Yeah.
a big hype up, but people will often find us that way. So yeah, the hype up, the confidence boosting really plays a big role. I'd say another big topic that comes up is like addressing the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Mm.
A lot of people we find are so nervous about uh, like covering any tricky topics, but a lot of the time they're not that tricky. They might have just had a career gap. They might have taken time off to become parents, or they've hopped around jobs a lot because they didn't really find their, mojo. And they're so worried about how that looks that they're turning themselves
Yeah.
in knots, trying to dance around it, and
Not
we
mention
really
it,
love
gloss over it.
empowering. We love
Yes.
empowering people to just talk about it. It can be a brief sentence in your tell me about yourself, and you're getting it out there, owning it, and removing any space for the person on the other side to make assumptions
Right.
about what might be going on
Yeah.
instead.
Something.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think being proactive with something like that and just getting it
Yeah.
out speaks
And
volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. Like,
Yeah.
I've sat in on so many interviews in all different industries. It's been across not-for-profit, retail, construction, whether they're kind of blue collar, white collar, senior, junior, all these kinds of different roles. And I see when people have something that they're kind of not talking about, and it's always, always worse when you find out about it as a surprise later on in the process.
Yes.
So sorry, why don't you have any references from that role? Oh, well, actually, and then they have to
Absolutely.
go into the story then. Okay, well, that's not what you said earlier in the interview.
Right.
Versus people who just say, look, I have left that role. It just really wasn't the right place for me. I've taken a little bit of time off and now I'm looking for the right thing. Cool. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but I trust that person so much more because they've just been upfront about, here's my current situation.
Right.
And
So
we get people freaking out about the strangest things, like saying that they didn't want to say that it was their family business that they were working for previously because they think that someone's going to assume that that means they didn't work hard or something. Like,
stable or something.
Just say it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. Own it and just move
Yeah.
forward. And yeah, it doesn't look bad. So I was going to ask, just speaking of elephants in the room, is there a good way to bring up pay? Because not many jobs these days advertise the pay, and you don't want to be 5 interviews in before pay is discussed, but you also don't want to turn a hiring manager or recruiter off by bringing it up too early. Is there like a golden rule of when you can bring pay up, or what's your best advice in terms of that?
Yeah, good question. So we've got some episodes about how to do this and how to kind of come up with your number and how to research and all those kind of things that go into that. But I think really you need to have an idea of a number in mind that you are looking for. You need to have an answer to that question of expectations. And that's going to depend on the situation that you're in. I know it can be really, really tricky when, yeah, you would like to be paid this much, but you're in a position where you don't have a lot of influence and you don't have many other options. And so you would take X number. Like you have to kind of factor all of that in. Once you've arrived on a number, and like I say, we've got episodes that a whole 30 minutes on how to do that. The recruiter should be asking you that when you get on that very first phone call. If they don't, I would be asking it in that very first phone call if you do get a conversation like that. And by recruiter, I mean either agency or internal recruiter, either works. If for whatever reason they don't do that, and you still don't have the information, it's not on the ad, it hasn't been sent to you in some other way, it's okay to mention that at the end of the interview when you've come in and say, I just wanted to get an understanding of the pay range for this role. We haven't discussed it yet. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. It would be very strange to me that you would get to a whole interview and it still hasn't been mentioned by the other side as well. But they will be wanting to make sure that they're on the same page as well, because they don't want to be making an offer to someone that, you know, is in the complete wrong bracket. So it's okay to bring that up. And if they say, what are your expectations? You need to have a number ready. This idea of, you can do a range if you'd like, but this idea of ask them what their budget is, flip it back on, like, it's a silly little dance that everyone does. There's no such thing as like, who's going to win in this situation. You need to kind of do your research and have that number backed. And have an answer to, you know, here's what I'm expecting. I'm looking for roles around 80,000 at the moment.
Okay.
And yeah, and then kind of go from there. You should just be able to say that one line and not overthink it, not overly explain why, not go into too much detail. It should be a fairly simple process.
Excellent. Thank you. And can we talk really quickly? I know you've got so many episodes about this, but interview tips. And I would love both of you to just tell me, do you have like a best tip for standing out in an interview?
Yep. I think my number one thing, and if we're known for anything in this whole world, I hope it would be this, is that most people, I think, prepare for interviews completely backwards. So they start thinking about the questions that they might get asked, and then they come up with answers to those questions. Now, the thing is, you don't know what you're going to be asked in the interview, and there's actually no way for you to tell. People like to ask us sometimes, oh, what do you think they're going to ask me about for this kind of job? I don't know. We have no idea. Probably sometimes the interviewer doesn't actually know yet. They're just going to make it up on the spot. So we can't really prepare for the exact kind of questions that are going to come up. And what happens when you do it that way is that you get something a bit curly or something you didn't expect, and you have no idea what to say. What we do know about the interview, though, is the topic of conversation is going to be what you've done before, your experience. And the great thing is that doesn't change. That's not something that's going to suddenly surprise you. You've done certain things. So what you can do to prep, and what we kind of talk about, is coming up with your best bits. These are your stories, your examples, you know, star response, whatever you'd like to kind of call them. But you want to start coming up with those without thinking about any questions in mind. What are the great things that I want to make sure that I mention? Here's this project that I did. Here's this stakeholder that I had a great relationship with. Here's this improvement that I made. They can be tiny little things, or they can be really big, chunky projects. You want to pick, here's the stuff that I want them to know about me before I walk out of here, because they've only got your job titles and a few bullet points. They haven't got these real stories. And then what you can do is match those in your interview. When you get a question, you can kind of look at, okay, here's all my stories that I've got. Which one of those stories might match this question that they're asking about? Because I promise, as soon as you go into an in-depth example of, here's a little task I was given and how I worked through it, I promise it has communication in it. I promise it has some time management in it. Like, all of these big things you've done.
Conflict,
contain multiple different topics. And so I want people to think about it how do I use the great stuff that I've done to answer the questions that they might be asking me, as opposed to the other way around? Because I promise, if you search through your memory for communication, you're communicating all day, every day. Like, thinking of a communication example is going to give you something really random, as opposed to coming up with your awesome stuff you want to mention and picking which one of those happens to also tick off communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
My
Sorry. Yeah, Emma.
Oh, I was just going to say my favorite analogy with it is it's like you're in doing your year 12 English exam where you've got your set text, you know the book inside out, you pick out your quotes, you've got them memorized. You go in though to the exam, you don't know if they're going to ask you about belonging or journeys, but you're ready for whatever the question is to adapt
Yes.
your quotes to
Yeah,
link
Yes.
to the question. And it's
Yes.
the exact
That's
same.
right. The text doesn't change. The quotes don't change. The story doesn't change. You know the story. You know what you've got. You're just adapting it to the question on the go. That's exactly the way that we want to think about interviews.
Yeah, because if you add in a few like jitters because you are being interviewed, your memory can go blank. So I think having
Yeah.
Yep.
your little key highlights,
Yeah.
just having
Another
those.
awesome tip I think of ours is about storytelling. So obviously all of your examples that you give are often you're giving an example, a story, but our most powerful part of storytelling can be in the tell me about yourself. And I always give an example where, say, if I was going for an interview in radio, instead of just saying, yeah, my name's Emma, I'm a third year university student, I'm looking to get a job, in the field. Um, I've had experience in hospitality. I can use all that same key information, but jazz it up into a really engaging story. Like, I grew up in the country, and from as long as I can remember, I used to pretend to be the local newsreader on TV and do fake bulletins for
That's
my
all true.
family, which is all true, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I moved to the big smoke when I was 18, and I enrolled in my dream course of journalism. Once I got a taste for it and trialed audio and podcasting at uni, I just fell in love. So now I really want to continue this trajectory in audio, and that's why this job at the radio, like, how much more
Yeah.
engaging and memorable is that than just rattling off the key facts about why you're
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
No.
promise, I know that it can sound like, if you're listening to that, that's really easy for Emma, who had like a, here's what I wanted to do and now I'm
Yeah.
doing it kind of thing. But I promise you can turn any kind of mixed up, strange career story where you've had gaps and career changes and all sorts of things, you can turn that into a story as well. I was doing this for a while and I learnt this about myself. And so that's why I went here. And then a friend took me here and blah, blah, blah. Here's what I learnt there. And that gave me these skills. And that's now why I want to do XYZ. Like, you're
Is that
telling a
something you
story.
guys can help job seekers with? Because sometimes if it can be a little bit overwhelming, it depends on the person and how
Yeah.
complicated their employment history is. But is that something that you guys do in Interview Academy? If you're doing one-on-one sessions, can you help somebody with their little narrative?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So we have a course called Interview Academy. So that takes people through a whole range of different topics, but it's a lot of mindset, your whole career story. There's a whole module on how to kind of put that together and make it really engaging and get it really something that makes you feel really great, because it can kick off the interview on such a high. You can be so well prepared for that question. Then it goes through all of your best bits, coming up with those, structuring them, practicing them, being prepared for other types of questions, all of the kind of prep of how you're going to set yourself up to deal with nerves, coming up with a nerves plan for yourself as well. It takes everyone through all of that. And if people do that and they want some more one-on-one help, or some people kind of have already been able to do the basics themselves and they just want more of a personalized kind of session, I do one-on-one coaching sessions with people all around the world. And sometimes the biggest breakthrough we have is going through their career story, and we actually don't even get to touch all of their questions and their stories they want to tell, because that's the bit that was holding them back and making them really confused about how to pitch themselves. And so once we do that, they go, oh, don't worry, I can handle the rest. This is
Got
the
it.
thing that's going to make a difference. Yeah.
And probably one of the most important things to focus on, because first impressions do matter in an interview,
Yeah.
I think. So I think it's a really good one to focus on.
And first
Speaking,
impressions for you too, because if you're confident after the end of that, then you carry that through the rest of the interview. You can kind of carry you through maybe a wobbly answer later on because you started really strong.
yes. And I wanted to ask, I know candidates should definitely be asking questions at the end of an interview. for their sake. And also, I think it's a good way to be memorable. But have there been any terrible questions that you've been asked, Sarah, or any questions that you hate being asked at
Ooh.
the end of an interview and you're like, oh, this person was great until they started asking these questions? Anything somebody should avoid?
I I will I'll say this to begin with, and then I'll kind of think of something. So I have never either had this change myself or seen this in a hiring manager where the opinion that you had about a candidate was completely changed, either good or bad, by the questions that they asked. It's just not the case. A
Yeah.
candidate doesn't go from average to amazing by asking a really good question, and they don't go from amazing to terrible by asking a bad question. So I think that's like it's something that kind of adds to your overall picture that people are forming. But I don't want people to think that this is like the make or break moment. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of pressure on that. There has to be this perfect question.
Yes.
I think the things that I find that I don't that aren't great questions to ask is when I can tell that the person has just Googled it and they don't really care about the answer. When it doesn't come from a place of curiosity, where they don't actually want to know, they've just heard that it was a good question to ask. And so they said, how would you describe the culture? And like that, and you're like, oh, cool. Look, that's a really broad question. What particularly are you interested in about the culture? And they can't kind of elaborate because I'm going, okay, I could talk for an hour about the culture here. Like, what do you want
Yes.
specifically to
No.
know? Because they haven't thought about it and they don't actually really want to know. They just,
Right.
someone said
Ticking
culture was
meter.
important. And so they like Googled that question or whatever. I think those are the questions that I think, oh, that was such a missed opportunity for them to actually dig deeper on what they wanted to know and be specific. And then I can feel when there's genuine curiosity on the other side. Like they want to know, hey, I've worked for a business that does things this way. Tell me about the culture here, or tell me about the team's culture that I'll be working in. Great. That's way more of an interesting kind of question to get
Yes.
into. Yeah. Does that kind of make
Okay.
sense? Like it's
It
the
does.
wanting to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And you can see right through it when it's just a question for
Mm.
the sake of asking a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another one I'd love to know, do you like follow up? Just a thank you email after an interview? Is that enough? Or do you want to be reminded of that candidate like in a couple of weeks? Do you want them to check in with you? Or do you want to just leave the ball in your court and when there is an update, you will share it?
I think follow-ups are good. I think if you want to follow up, you absolutely can. It's definitely not the thing that's going to change anyone's mind. I think I've definitely heard hiring managers say, oh, how good was that they followed up? But again, I think that adds to an already great
Solid.
interview,
Yes.
already great candidate. Does that kind of make sense? Like you don't
Yes.
hear about the times when someone had a follow-up and they didn't like the candidate anyway. Like there's kind of like a survivor bias thing that happens there where you hear about, oh, and this was also so good. Like it's just an added kind of touch that people do. So I think by all means follow up if you've had a really good interview. You should be asking like separately to your questions at the end. Let's say you ask 3 genuine curious questions at the end. We have a database of questions if you need some inspo, but don't ask them just
Everything
because you
comes.
find them on the database. So you ask 3 questions, then your final one after that should be, what are the next steps? Now, they will typically cover this anyway, but I think you have the right to know when should I expect to hear back? And let's say it's Monday that you're having your interview, and they might say, oh, by the end of the week. Okay, great. So you wait to the end of the week. If it's the Monday the following week and you didn't hear back on the Friday, follow up for sure.
Okay.
Hey, just following up from the interview I had last week, wanted to check where the role was at. I hadn't heard anything. Can you give me an update? That's completely fine.
Okay.
But we also do tell people keep applying until you've got a contract and you've signed it. Keep applying. It is so easy to feel like, okay, this is going to be it. This whole nightmare of job searching is going to be over. I've got this job. I'm so excited about it. The interview goes well. You just have no idea what's going to happen. It could be the role goes on hold, the manager leaves, there's something else that comes up. There's so many other things that could come up before you actually get that contract. And I hate seeing people take their foot off the gas and think, oh, I'm going to stop applying, I'm going to stop doing other things. That's when you can get into the territory of starting to obsess about what's happening, what's going on. I haven't heard, they've reposted the ad, like following everything that's kind of going on with the company. And it's torture. It's really awful. And it ultimately kind of distracts you from like the next step and moving forward and having other opportunities and other things you could have applied for. You want to spread your energy. That company doesn't deserve your full undivided attention until you've got a contract.
Okay.
And
So
on
interviews.
that, with the thank you following up, we do say in general, if you do want to pounce within the 24 hours, like do it sort of immediately after, and just like thanks so much for your time, and pop something in there that's your a genuine interest that you learned or really liked, not just like, again, I'm really it's not a last chance to like plead your case or do a sales pitch. It's just thank you so much, and here's something I really found interesting or that excites me about the company. Look forward to hear, like, very brief. It's not a sales
Could be something
pitch,
you've
I guess.
discussed. Like, yeah, try and make it human. There's
Super
not really
valuable.
a
Another
set
sales.
template.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really solid advice there. And just to finish, I would love to know, do you guys have a funny or like terrible interview moment that you've come across that you can share? Have you heard anything outrageous?
Got a few. I've had some real doozies over the year. I'll give you 3 options maybe of what you, and you can tell me which story you want to hear.
Choose your fighter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love this.
One where someone was caught in a lie during the interview. One where someone was went robot mode, and then another where someone was under the influence.
Jeez. I'm going to go caught in the lie. That's
Okay,
really
yeah,
scary.
I was hoping you'd pick that one.
Option
So
number one.
this candidate was going for a relatively junior HR role. So this is someone that I was interviewing, but also was going to be potentially working with as well. So extra stakes, I guess, of like interviewing for the right person. We actually, in this case, weren't that interested in someone having previous experience. It was kind of beneficial, but we didn't necessarily need it. We were interested in them being the right kind of fit. The ad talked about that. The phone conversation talked about all of that. My colleague had actually spoken to them first on the phone and had a good kind of chat with them. And it wasn't until after the interview kind of started and they were going through their background that we kind of noticed, hold on, there's no dates on any of these roles that this person has had. And they'd had a couple of roles in law and then a couple of roles, like I think maybe one role in HR. And they were saying they were switching from law and now they decided they wanted to go into HR. And some of the stories they were telling, they were referencing COVID, and we were going, okay, so how long have you been there? Where's this one? And what we were able to kind of tease out is that this person wasn't at their most recent place on their resume at all. They were working in like a part-time casual job in a warehouse, not related to their legal career, which there was nothing wrong with that at all. Like if that had been up front, not a problem. It's just that not only were they not upfront about that on their resume, not upfront about it in the phone conversation, not upfront about it in the first bit of the interview. We had to dig and dig and push and push and push. And it was like the 4th round of kind of questions. Okay, so where are you working now? After fully teasing everything out, that they finally revealed it. And that level of like hiding was just an absolute deal breaker. Because
really,
if this person,
credibility.
yeah,
they could have used awesome examples from their warehouse job to help them get this job.
I know. I wanted to hear about the warehouse job. We didn't need them to have a heap of experience. Like them saying, hey, I did this legal career and I thought it was my dream thing and I absolutely hated it. The hours were brutal. The people were tough to work with. I moved to a different firm. It was all still the same problem. So I've honestly just left that career and I'm recovering from burnout, dealing with some personal stuff. And now I've decided, to go back to the other part of my degree, which was HR, and that's why I'm here. Incredible story. Like it was just so unnecessary. And
what a shame.
Such a breach of like
trust, and
you're never going to trust that candidate ever again, because it was really pulling teeth to get the truth out of them, and no one wants to work with someone who's going to cover things up and not be kind of upfront about it, particularly when they're questioned. Like I can understand maybe wanting to go, hey, take the years off your resume to kind of get through to actually speak to someone, and then you can explain. Like I can see the value in that, and I would occasionally recommend people to do that if they felt like that was going to help them get that first phone call. But you then need to be like, oh, look, I left the years off my thing because it's just a bit confusing. I prefer to be able to explain it. Here's what's currently going on. Great. Do that instead.
Yeah. It's also tricky.
But yeah, very memorable. I will never forget. We actually recorded an episode the other day about the idea of being memorable and how the most memorable interviews I've had are all the horrible ones. Like, you don't want to be memorable.
Yeah.
I can throw myself under the bus for lying quickly.
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I do. But when I was 18, I got my first full-time job out of school. It was a business admin traineeship in my hometown, and interview went really well. It was lovely. As we were walking out, so it wasn't even a proper interview question. It was just a on the fly walking me back out to the front door type question. They were like, "Oh, by the way, can you drive manual?" And I just went, "Yep,
God.
yep, yep." Could not drive manual. So then I had 2 weeks to learn how to drive a manual because I got the
Yeah.
job. And so my best friend frantically taught me how to drive manual in 2 weeks. And when I got there, I learned that it wasn't an essential part of the job. It was just
You
because I
could've
had to duck down to like the post office to pick
Okay.
stuff up. And the
Right.
option was there that they had manual company cars. So I could take that if I wanted instead of my own
or
car.
just take your own car. Yeah. So
But I
it
could have
wasn't even
taken my own
necessary.
car. So
So you
it was
didn't
so
need to teach yourself to
unnecessary.
drive. You
No,
got
but I just panicked and it came out and it was just horrific. So yeah, but it all worked out. So
I've been
and now
meaning to
you
ask
drive
you.
manual.
Yeah. Did you tell them that after you started there?
I actually don't know if I did, but I still actually work for that company now in a freelance basis. So I should circle back and let them know.
I mean, you've only just mentioned it on live radio and on a podcast and on this now. Like,
Yeah,
they
they'll
might
find
hear it
out,
and
I'm
go,
sure.
"Oh, I didn't even know that Emma lied." That's so funny.
Good times.
Don't you think
Yeah.
it is so hard to lie these days with LinkedIn about dates and things? And it's such a
Yeah.
small, connected world. So definitely job seekers should be careful if they are planning on. I think
Well,
you
and
can
I
stretch
just
the
think,
experience a little bit.
yeah, I think
Mm.
if you need to be confident that you're not going to have to backtrack on it later. And
Yeah.
unless you're 100% confident that it's not going to come back,
Yeah.
it's so much
Not worth
worse
the
to have
risk.
someone find it out later on as opposed to just be
Yes.
upfront in the first place. And like, it's so much less of a big deal than you think it is. And imagine then you start and all your colleagues and your boss that interviewed you can't mention any of those things that happened because I just think in
Good
order to
point.
lie, you have to have an excellent memory about who knows what. And
Yeah.
I just don't have the mental capacity to do that.
No, way too stressful.
I would slip
Yeah.
up and tell someone something and they'd be like, "Wait, didn't you say in your interview that you worked here?" Oh,
You don't want to be covering tracks for the rest of your
yeah.
life.
No.
Yeah. You guys, this has been so great. Love listening to your podcast. You guys are so fun to chat to. You're so fun to listen to. Congratulations on all the success of Interview Boss. If any job seekers are after more tips and expert advice, make sure you check out Interview Boss podcast. They have covered everything job searching. And if you're serious about landing your next role quickly, also check out the Interview Boss Academy. Definitely worth checking out. These guys are awesome. So thank you so much, Sarah and Emma, for sharing all your wisdom and some funny stories. And we'll stay in touch.
Thanks so much
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Thanks, Leah.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.